You've been praying in the wrong tense your entire life. Every request you've ever whispered, every desire you've ever lifted up, every late-night plea for the thing you wanted, you spoke them all in the future. And the future is exactly where they stayed. By the end of this, you'll see why one sentence buried in the Gospel of Mark contains the entire mechanics of manifestation, and why almost no one applies it correctly. Read it slowly. Whatsoever things ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. Notice the word that breaks every assumption you brought to this verse. Believe that ye receive them. Present tense, already received. The thing you want is treated as a completed event before any visible evidence supports it. This is the sequence. This is the order of operations. Consciousness obeys. Most people read this and quietly translate it back into something more comfortable. They turn it into, believe really hard that it'll happen eventually. That translation feels safer because it keeps you in the position of asker, of supplicant, of the one waiting. But the verse asks you to assume the receipt has already occurred. There's a reason this is the harder instruction. Consider what assumption actually means inside your body. When you assume something is true, truly assume, without internal argument, you stop generating the chemistry of lack. Your shoulders drop, your breathing slows, the constant low-grade scanning for what's missing goes quiet. You walk through your day as the person who has, not the person who hopes, and the world begins responding to that person. This is the part most teachings skip. The assumption is more than a thought you repeat in your head while still feeling the ache of absence. The ache betrays you. If you say, I have it, while every cell of you reports, I don't, the louder signal wins. And the louder signal is always the felt one. Neville Goddard spent 40 years pointing at this single mechanic. The feeling of the wish fulfilled is the cause. The visible answer is the effect. Reverse that order and you spend a lifetime praying without receiving. So why did the instruction come in those exact words? Because the man who spoke them understood that consciousness is the operative power, and consciousness only produces what it accepts as already so. The withered fig tree, the calmed storm, the loaves multiplied. Every account in the Gospels follows the same internal posture. He declared. He spoke from the end and the world rearranged itself to match. You've been taught this is reserved for prophets. The verse is addressed to whatsoever ye desire, a clause that includes you, your specific situation, the thing you've been afraid to even name out loud. Here's where the resistance kicks in. You're already thinking, but what if I assume and it doesn't come? That doubt is itself the data. The doubt tells you that you haven't actually assumed. You've performed assumption while secretly bracing for disappointment. The body knows, and bracing for disappointment is a prayer too. It's just a prayer for the outcome you fear, dressed in the costume of realism. So, how do you actually shift the felt sense? The move isn't to feel happy about the thing, it's to feel natural about it. Boring even. Picture being told something you already deeply know to be true. Your response isn't elation, it's a quiet, yes, obviously. That quiet yes, obviously is the texture of true assumption. It's the felt version of, it is done. Pick the desire you've been circling for months. Now ask yourself, if you woke up tomorrow and discovered it had quietly arrived overnight, how would you move through your morning? Forget the celebration, the afternoon 3 weeks in, when the having has become ordinary. Find that emotional temperature, live there for 10 minutes. That is what the verse instructs. A reasonable objection comes here, and it deserves a real answer. If assumption alone produced results, wouldn't every casual daydream materialize? Wouldn't the world be chaos? The answer is in the word believe. Daydreams are entertained. Assumptions are accepted. There's a difference between visiting a state and inhabiting one. You can fantasize about wealth for an hour and return to your familiar identity of scarcity. The fantasy never touched your operating assumption about who you are. The verse asks for an inhabited state. This is also why the Kybalions' principle of vibration aligns so cleanly with the instruction. Everything is in motion. Everything emits a frequency. Your habitual emotional state is the frequency you broadcast continuously, and the world organizes itself around that signal. Change the broadcast and the responses change. The broadcast is your inner conviction about what is real for you. There's a moment in your day when this becomes measurable. Watch yourself the next time something small goes wrong. A delay, a rejection, a piece of bad news. Notice the speed at which your inner voice says of course. That of course reveals your default assumption. The work is to build a new of course, slowly, deliberately, until the next piece of unexpected good news is met with the same calm response. When good fortune stops surprising you, you've changed your identity at the level the verse points to. This is the inner work nobody markets, the daily discipline of refusing to entertain thoughts that contradict the state you're claiming. Goddard called it the mental diet. James Allen, decades earlier, wrote that a man is literally what he thinks, his character being the complete sum of all his thoughts. Both were pointing at the same mechanic the gospel writer compressed into a single sentence. Your inner conversation is the seed, your outer life is the harvest. There's no skipping the season between. And the season between is where most people quit. They assume the wish fulfilled for 3 days, see no evidence, and conclude the principle is broken. But the principle was never broken. The assumption was abandoned the moment the visible world failed to confirm it on the assumer's preferred timeline. Real assumption is unbothered by the gap. The state is held regardless of what the senses report, because the state is the cause and the senses are showing yesterday's effect. Think about what this means for the prayer that has gone unanswered for years. The universe didn't refuse you, you kept refilling the request. Every time you prayed again, you affirmed that you didn't yet have it. You reissued the petition, which reaffirmed the lack, which broadcast lack, which produced more lack to pray about. The loop is closed, and you're inside it. The verse is asking you to step out of the loop entirely, to stop petitioning and start occupying, to pray once from the consciousness of having, and then to live as the one who received. Gratitude becomes the natural posture, because gratitude is what the having actually feels like. A practical sequence then. First, get specific. Vague desires produce vague assumptions. Know exactly what you want in concrete sensory detail. Second, identify the version of you who already has it. What does she wear? How does he speak? What does that person no longer worry about? Third, occupy that identity in small moments throughout the day. A few minutes here, a quiet decision there. Fourth, refuse the inner argument when it rises. You don't have to win the argument with doubt. You just have to stop entertaining it. And the fifth step is the one that separates the people who get results from the people who get philosophy. Persistence. The persistence of holding the state, days when the world contradicts you, days when the evidence runs the opposite direction. Days when every rational voice in your head calls you delusional, you hold the state anyway. Because the state is the manifestation, in seed form, and the seed doesn't sprout in front of the gardener checking on it every hour. Some will hear all this and ask whether it conflicts with surrender, with letting go, with thy will be done. It doesn't. Surrender in this framework is releasing your grip on the how. You assume the end, and you let the means arrange themselves through channels you couldn't have predicted. The job that comes from the unexpected email, the relationship that begins through a stranger's introduction, the money that arrives through a door you didn't know existed, these are the means. You assume the end, and you stay out of the way. The instruction in Mark is, in this light, a complete metaphysical formula, compressed into 19 words. Desire, pray, believe you have received, have. The sequence is the sequence. Skip the third step and you stay forever in the first. Here's what shifts when you actually apply this. The desperate quality drains out of your wanting. You stop chasing. People feel it. Opportunities feel it. The thing you've been straining toward begins to drift in your direction because you've stopped pushing inward on a door that opens outward. The strain was the obstruction. The assumption removes the strain. One last reframe before you go. You've been treating prayer as a request submitted to an external authority who may or may not approve it. The verse describes something different, prayer as the act of accepting internally that what you desire is already yours in the only realm where causation actually originates. Your consciousness is that realm. What you accept there, you eventually meet here. The delay between the two is called life. So the question is whether the principle works on you the way it's been working on you your whole life, producing exactly the outcomes you most deeply believed possible for yourself. The question is whether you'll start using it on purpose, whether you'll stop praying for the thing and start being the one who has it, whether you'll meet the next ordinary morning as someone whose desire has already, quietly been answered. The verse is a description of the present you haven't claimed yet. Step into it. Today, The receipt was issued the moment you believed it was.